Boris Johnson dominates. Outright, complete, utter, entire domination. No one is even close. What am I talking about? Jamal, what are you talking about? The Tory challenge. The Tories are trying to determine who's going to be the next prime minister. And right now, Boris Johnson is a clear, not just clear, a complete and a distant first place. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is Progressive Soapbox. And indeed, Boris Johnson has dominated the first round of the Tory leadership challenge. It's not even close. If you remember, there were, if I'm not mistaken, 9 or 10 contestants in the race. Boris Johnson comes up with 140 votes. 140 votes. Now, you only need 105 to get through all of the rounds, meaning Boris Johnson's, and I need to explain that, but Boris Johnson's place in this, he's going to be in that last round regardless of what takes place from here on out, providing nothing insane happens. He does get hit by an airplane or something. If you notice, no one else was close. Dominic Raab was number 2. I'm sorry, Jeremy Hunt was number 2, followed by Raab and followed by Javid, the one that signed the extradition warrant for Julian Assange. Boris Johnson outright and completely dominated this process. I mean, it's astonishing. If these are the people who are in the race. 3 of them have been eliminated. But it is unclear who's going to be the number 2 person for Johnson, because sometimes some of the stuff is politics that these guys play within the race itself, meaning sometimes you block certain people and other times you vote for the person that you want. So 3 are out of the race, 7 others. So now the question becomes, what happens? Now let me explain how the Tories do this. It's like a cockfight. They peck each other until you get to the last 2, in which case the broader party itself votes on them. Now what I mean by that is the people within the party, the leadership of the party itself, kind of like the politicians themselves, vote on the Tories, who they want, and to see the leadership, to think of the elected members. And then this goes down to the rest of the party itself, meaning the rest of the Tories vote on the last 2. But up to that point, these guys are kind of, fighting each other. But Boris Johnson is taking a clear lead, and Boris Johnson is going to be in the finals, regardless of who's in the finals with him. I suppose Jeremy Hunt is probably the closest person to him, so I guess those that are prevailing 2, or those are the thoughts. The thought is that those 2 people are probably in the lead so far. My question gets more interesting. What does it mean for Boris Johnson to win? Because it seems like Boris Johnson is sailing. And I've argued that it has to be Boris Johnson. The other people in the race don't have the name recognition that Boris Johnson has. And if the Tories has any chance of winning after the stink Theresa May made of the Tory party, you're going to need somebody with a huge amount of name recognition and charisma. Doesn't matter he's a liar. Doesn't matter he's a womanizer. He has a certain degree of charisma with him that has a star quality that whatever I think of him, it's there. That's the guy. Could be wrong. He's a gaffe machine also. So between, now and then, anything can happen. I want to get into what it means, though. I'm fascinated by this question. What does it mean to have Bojo as prime minister? I don't think anybody knows what that means. I would go in a few angles, though. Boris Johnson has said that they are leaving on October 31st with or without a deal. This, of course, freaked out Parliament, because whatever Boris Johnson says, Boris Johnson is still stuck with the Parliament that Theresa May had. So this Brexiteer, how is this Brexiteer going to, beat this Parliament into form where this Parliament is going to do something different that they wasn't going to do under Theresa May? And does the very fact of him being a Brexiteer and being very specific in what he wants, is that enough to get Parliament to do what he wants? And even if Parliament passed something different, because you understand, in order to head off a no-deal Brexit, you got to vote on something. Something has to go through Parliament. Parliament not having anything that they can vote on, meaning that all of them can get a majority on, you got to vote on something. So if Boris Johnson says either we have a deal or we're leaving, and Parliament is saying, look, we are not leaving, there is no penchant for a no-deal Brexit, then what are you going to vote on in order to prevent the no-deal Brexit? What are you going to vote on to prevent the no-deal Brexit? That's the question, right? The European Union responded to Boris Johnson saying, we're going to try to get a new deal. The European Union, the new UK PM will not change the Brexit deal. Juncker. I don't care that you guys have a new prime minister. The last prime minister, regardless of being vilified, regardless of being completely disliked, the last prime minister negotiated a deal. And so you're stuck with the deal that you got. How is this going to work? How is this going to play out? Boris can't take that deal. Boris Johnson cannot accept the deal of the prime minister. It is impossible for Boris Johnson to go and say, this deal is an utter capitulation to the European Union. This is a surrender. We will be in the, I think, quote unquote, vassal state was the term that he used. Meaning, he can't take the deal. There is no cover for him in this process. Boris Johnson cannot walk away with the exact same deal that Theresa May kept trying to put before Parliament. That would be another failure and a complete betrayal of everything that he said up to this point. So that looks like a no deal, right? Question becomes, is the European Union bluffing? Isn't there a situation where the European Union didn't give it Theresa May any leeway in this because ultimately Theresa May couldn't get the deal through anyway? Why are we going to give the Prime Minister leeway when the Prime Minister couldn't get that deal through even if we gave her leeway? So is it possible that the European Union is being a tough negotiator and to some degree bluffing? They've shown no cues that they're bluffing, but by the same token, they weren't necessarily dealing with somebody that was genuinely willing to go through with a no-deal Brexit. The next point. Boris Johnson has no legitimacy. Zero. He was elected by a bunch of Tories. He wasn't elected by the rest of the country. And if Boris Johnson really is on this tip of we're leaving on October the 31st with or without a deal, and the rest of the country is not on board for this, even though people who voted for Brexit may not necessarily wanted a no-deal Brexit because they didn't necessarily know what Brexit entirely meant when they voted for this notion of Brexit. They just voted for it in this kind of, ephemeral way. What does it look like when that guy is saying we're leaving on October 31st with or without a deal? Now, I've argued that you have to have no deal on the table. There is no way you can have a negotiation and take no deal off the table. Imagine you and I negotiating on something. And I'm saying, I'm not leaving here without a deal. And you say, fine, I'm going to give you the exact same deal that we gave the prime minister. That looks utterly absurd. You can't lock yourself into a room. There always has to be this notion of the ability to walk. How can you enter into a negotiation without the ability to walk? Aren't there some levels that you're willing to walk away from a deal if the deal is too depraved or if the deal is too onerous? The answer is, of course, yes. So no deal has to be on the table. Now, whether you shoot for that no deal is a second question. The no deal is kind of the nuclear option. It's the last step. But it's an indication that everything else has gone wrong. That's not necessarily something you want to shoot for. It's just something that needs to be there. The fact that Boris Johnson is willing to bring that up to some degree is a negotiation tactic, but by the same token, he means it. He means it. This is going to be fascinating politics. If the European Union doesn't budge, if Boris Johnson doesn't budge, if Parliament freaks out, doesn't Boris Johnson at this point have to have an election in order to legitimize himself? In our politics, in our countries, our legitimacy is given through elections. People go to the polls and they vote and say, we want this guy. We believe in this guy's vision. This is the person we believe is going to take us forward. And we're putting our stock in him. Whether we agree with this guy, disagree with this guy, at the very least the guy was elected. And because the guy was elected, he has a certain degree of legitimacy from the country itself. What happens when the only people that elected that guy were other Tories? And not just that. The only people who elected the guy were other Tories. And you're going through something that is going to change the contours and the color of your country for the next 50 years. Do you let that guy go through with that without any legitimacy at all of the voting booth? How? How does that take place? Don't you have to have a general election now? Don't you have to have a snap election? And by the way, whether the Tories want to have a snap election or not, they're still with the exact same weak position that they were in under Theresa May being propped up by the DUP. Nothing has changed. There's been one change. There was one less Tory in Parliament now because the last election was lost by Tories. It was won by Labour. Pay attention to the UK. This is going to be fascinating politics. And if Boris Johnson takes it, you're going to see a fight like you've never seen before in the UK. And you're going to see a certain degree of turmoil with a parliament that to some degree is going to push back on what that PM wants. By the same token, that PM is going to be strong enough to not necessarily change his disposition on what he's trying to accomplish. The catch here is this has to come to a head at some point. The parliament doesn't want a no deal. The speaker doesn't want a no deal. Burkow clearly doesn't want a no deal. The country mostly doesn't want a no deal. So what are you going to do when you have a Brexiteer at the head of the thing saying, look, if we got to take a no deal, we got to take a no deal? I agree with him on that, by the way. But what is the country going to think? This is going to be fascinating politics. This is going to be extraordinarily fascinating politics. Keep your eye on the UK. Even if it's in passing, even if it's just cutting an eye when you're not paying attention to the US news, keep an eye on the UK. It's utterly fascinating. I love it. I love it. You have no idea how much I love it. M. Watkins, bravo, big fan. Thank you, M. Watkins. Kills for a living. The war machine will never end. Your girl Tulsi looks more even weaker now. The attack is right. Deal or no deal. If Bojo the clown and the bald dude get elected, they can play a real life version of Deal or No Deal Brexit with baby Howie Mandel. What? What? That is astonishing. I wonder do people know who Howie Mandel is. Would you go on Jesse Lee Peterson's show? Would be amazing. Oh God, Port Film Co-op. I've seen Jesse Lee Peterson. I can't tell if he's serious or not. Like the stuff he says, and which gets across if he is being serious. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. I've seen his other shows. The questions are so weird. Like he was talking to Cal, and he went into this thing about Cal's religious beliefs, and it's not so much that that's an insane topic. And what I would give him credit for is, even though I disagree with him, he seems to be willing to talk to pretty much anybody. Like he has these conversations across the board. I remember he had one with H.A. Goodman. He had one with David Packman. The religious belief stuff is always funny to me because it's he goes into the stuff of people being alpha males and beta males and all this other nonsense. I don't quite get it. I mean, that's his sandbox. That's his I guess you could say his developmental thing. That's his model of the world. That's his reality box. I don't know. I would have to think about it. I don't necessarily hate it. I don't necessarily like it. I don't know how I feel about it. It's just such an off-ball thing. All right. Let's see, Bill Desar. At best, Cal provides some reactionary rhetoric, but doesn't base his decisions in science. He uses feels. Fair enough. Word of Chaos. Jamal organized the social media debates for the presidential candidates. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I don't know what that fully means, though. Co-op is hardcore sucking Jesse's cock. Who is Co-op? Who is Co-op? Oh, you mean here, the guy here. Well, yeah, that's funny. He might like him. I mean, it's an off-ball thing. I give you an example. I don't like Boris Johnson, but I kind of like Boris Johnson. And this is one of those things where it's depending on the situation that the people are in. If Hitler is at your gates, I want Winston Churchill. That's the guy I want. He's a right-winger, yes. He's, anti-Bolshevik, all that stuff, yes. By the same token, that is also the guy that is reactionary, that is screaming at that moment, we're going to fight him with our kitchens, we're going to fight him at our gates, we're going to fight him with bricks and sticks, we're going to fight him with, whatever we can get our hands on. That's the guy that I want. I want to be riled up. I want to be, running outside with a shirt on and, holding a fork and a spoon or something. I don't want the kind of calm rhetoric at that point because that's not the mood for the calm rhetoric. By the same token, if you're past the wartime, then no, I don't necessarily need Winston Churchill. My point is, it's situational dependent. It's not necessarily always specific to the individual themselves. Spectacle found a way to nudge Corbyn out of the spotlight. Johnson is like a metric version of Trump. But they're I know what I was getting at with that. Johnson. Look, Theresa May's negotiated a deal that the country doesn't want. And it couldn't even get through Parliament. It got voted down in a historic measure. The guy who wants Brexit looks like would be the person to try to deliver Brexit. It's odd that you have a Remainer trying to deliver Brexit, if that makes sense. It's not that I necessarily, again, want a no-deal Brexit, so don't misunderstand me. It's just that it needs to be on the table, and any notion that it's off the table is nonsense. And yeah, you can't have it. I don't think you can split the baby on this. You got to make a choice. And in this case, Bojo will make a choice. The problem with Bojo is that he would go for this kind of helter-skelter, and the deal he would negotiate would be a Tory Brexit. It's a fucking horrendous situation. So do not misunderstand, any kind of support for Boris Johnson in this case. It more so boils down to this notion of Theresa May couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. And it seems massively unfair to me to pretend as if the referendum didn't take place. Meaning to get to the point of saying, okay, we're going to ignore the fact that the referendum took place, or we're going to countermand the referendum, or we're going to scrub the referendum. That just seems absurd. That's astonishing precedent to me. The public voted on something, and then we didn't like what the public voted on, so we're going to pretend that the public didn't vote on that thing. That just seems preposterous to me. The public voted for Brexit in a referendum. How do you ignore the referendum? Like, that's direct democracy. You call yourself a democracy. That's literally direct democracy. That's not some politician standing on a stage saying the public wants X. No, that's the public directly saying this is what we want. How do you pretend it's not there? And I'm saying that because there are some people who say, scrub it, get rid of it, countermand it, etc., etc., etc. You haven't even went through with it yet. But yeah, Corbyn out of the spotlight. Yes, that's true. That is true. And the catch with Boris Johnson is Theresa May was weak. He is not. I don't think Boris Johnson is weak in the least. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Tories, yes, but Johnson, I don't know. I don't know the dynamic. I need to see the stylized or how it looks in the first PMQs and the subsequent PMQs. I kind of want to see how it looks between the two when these guys are in their kind of cockfights. Johnson has said he wasn't going to do interviews or he wasn't going to do a debate, and now apparently I think last thing I heard in The Guardian say he was. So I'm not sure which one that is. I think at first he was like, I don't need to do a debate. It's going to be a cacophony. Not to mention the real reason is I'm so far ahead of the polls, I can only go down from here. Why on earth would I debate these people? All politicians, pretty much in every country, have that same inclination. Why on earth, what incentive is there for me to get into a debate with any of these people when I am 140 points up and the next closest person is like 30 something? Yeah. Corbyn is more vulnerable. See, I don't know. I need to see how that looks. Rainier Zofal, Jamal, it's 3 years next week. If you can implement something, you must revisit your decision. Get another vote for the next 3 years. Get another vote for the next 3 years. Again, Brexit is like a runaway train. Yeah, it is. Garden, yes, agreed. It has a play. And you know what? The reason why I asked the question about the Bojo, what does it mean? Because nobody knows. Like, your allegory to a runaway train, yeah, nobody knows. This is not one of those situations where people are like, when David Cameron resigned, that showed you that the brakes were gone. There were no brakes on this train. Cameron was like, I'm done, I'm out. And now Theresa May has bid adieu herself. Everything Boris says is horrendous. Yes, he is. He's like a mini Trump. All right, I'm going to end this because, like I said, this video wasn't meant to be long, and at this point, I'm just talking to the audience. I like doing that. Don't get me wrong. I just have a doctor's appointment today that I am totally like an hour behind for. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. I have two shows that I really want to do on Warren and one on Sanders. I need to think through the one on Sanders because I don't want to do, everybody's doing that kind of rehashed thing of democratic socialism. I think there's a deeper thing there, this kind of matrix-like version of that, where you can't really get anything big in your country without pushing the margins. And pushing the margins means going through a particular door that many of the other candidates shy away from. This notion of trying to get like incrementalism to some kind of social democracy, getting social democracy through the back door. But if you really want change, it's not through the back door. It's not a magical door. There's a reason. The Matrix isn't just, sci-fi stuff. There's a reality to the Matrix. Think for the moment of this stuff not as being, these computer agents, but think of it as a system where there are elements of the system that, whether they're driven by human intellect or not, at the very least, the incentives of the system keep how our system or how our world is intact. I said that poorly. What I mean is, the things that you dislike about your world, the incentive structures in your world that allow your world to be your world, that allow, the rich to get massively richer, the poor to get poorer. And if you look at the wealth distribution in regards to the amount of wealth, the top versus the bottom, we lost tons of cash while they got tons more, meaning what we lost, they gained. The expropriation of wealth from the bottom to the top. Why is it that way? Why is it such a fight to get these guys to pass Medicare for all, even though the public wants it? Why is it such a fight to expand Social Security, to increase taxes on the rich? Why are those things difficult to do? What is it about getting into the political space that all of a sudden decapitates this connection between the public itself that they push for support for and getting things done in the political edifice? What breaks that? What breaks that? Why is your system set and arranged in a way that people who are good people get pushed to the margins as opposed to the crooks and the psychopaths that are able to take power? And you don't believe me, they're psychopaths? Look at what they're doing in Venezuela. Look at what they're doing to Iran. And this is in a situation where we were attacked. This is for geopolitical influence and in some cases corporate influence. Why is it arranged that way? And the reality of it is, in order to change that, there is something significant that needs to take place within the context of your society, and pussyfooting around it is not the way to go. Fact of the matter is, I agree with Sanders on this. If he can withstand what they throw at him, and they're going to hit him with everything. Oh, he's a socialist. Oh, it's Venezuela. Oh, it's the Soviet Union. Oh, it's always happened before. What does he mean by corporate socialism? I don't understand this. They're going to hit him with everything. You're going to find one ad after the next. You're going to find CNN putting these dodgy polls. You're going to find media spaces maybe showing something that he's saying in the wrong light. You're going to find elevating certain candidates like Elizabeth Warren. You're going to find all of these things that are going to slight and go after him. Because fact of the matter is, if Sanders gets into office, what he wants, he's a true believer. But he's right on this point. If you can walk through that door, if you can get through that door, if you can get the American public to buy into your plan and everybody else is wrong, meaning you win in a way that shows that your perspective was right and everybody else is wrong. There's times in chess where you're in a situation, you're in a position, and the guy does something, and you're like, there's no fucking way he can get away with that. And in his mind, I can get away with it. And this is the moment where something big is going to take place one way or the other. If I win, meaning if I'm right, I'm winning this game because there's no way he can support this. And if he's right, I'm losing this game because there's no way, it's like one of us is right, one of us has to be wrong on this. There is no middle ground. I'm making the point that this is kind of what is taking place from the standpoint of Sanders giving that speech on democratic socialism. He is leaning into that particular argument. Fact of the matter is, he has to lean into that argument. He can't run away from that at this point. By the same token, he doesn't want to run away from it. This is the fight that he's been spoiling for the last 40 years. And I got to be honest. I heard that speech. And every time I hear that speech, I like that speech that much more. Because that speech resonates. It goes beyond just this notion of democratic socialism to this notion of just human rights. And this argument for human rights. And he's putting in this context of an economic Bill of Rights. How on earth are you free if you're working 80 hours a week? How? How is that freedom? How is any notion of freedom when you can't take care of yourself because you can't afford the healthcare bills? What does it look like when you're loaded down with debt? Working 40 hours a week, but loaded down with debt, hospital bill, education bill, all of these things. What does it look like when you have to take care of a parent on a job that is not even paying you a decent wage? And on top of not paying you a decent wage, you have to figure out a way to find somebody to look after her when you're at work or when your kid is sick. How are any of these things freedom? How? We've gotten so individualistic in a society where we miss the point that as individuals we can decide to work together for our collective best interests. You don't think the rich do it? The argument of the top 1%? I understand why they would make that argument. I understand why they would like that system to stay the way the system is. They're making buku bucks off of the system the way it is. My question is more so about the 99%. Why are you okay with the system the way that is? And in a situation where you have the power of the ballot box, why on earth do you allow that to remain and stay intact? Part of that has to do with a certain degree of propaganda that's associated with it. Part of it has to do with the political system itself, where you just need massive amounts of cash to get elected, which creates a class of people that continuously get elected, that seeks to ensure the interests of that class is maintained. Regardless of what they tell you, at the end of the day, what they do is something different. And when you're putting this situation of vote for this maniac or vote for this other guy that's a little bit of less of a maniac, one concentration camp less, many people decide to vote for the one concentration camp less, missing the fact that over the context of 20 years, you have a proliferation of concentration camps. The thing that you hated is the exact thing that you got based on the strategy that you are using, this kind of in-the-moment strategy for something that really is continuity. This is going way beyond the point. I'm going to end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. And I will most likely see you guys this evening. Thanks all. Bye-bye.